Here's a question that might mess you up a little. What money belief are you still carrying that you never actually chose? Your parents never talked about money, and somehow that silence became their entire financial personality. Gen X grew up watching their folks lose jobs, lose pensions, lose houses, and then just move on. No therapy, no conversation, just a tighter grip on the wallet and a deeper distrust of anyone in a suit. That silence didn't disappear, though. It mutated. And right now, it's quietly running the financial decisions of an entire generation, every single day. My name is Ricky, and I spend way too much time thinking about why different generations handle money so differently. If you're someone who grew up in the 70s or 80s, or you're raising someone who did, hit subscribe. This one's gonna land close to home. Okay, so look, you probably know a Gen X person. Maybe you are one. And there's this pattern they run that's honestly kind of painful to watch once you understand it. They work incredibly hard. Two jobs at once, never call in sick kind of hard. They save money, not because some advisor told them to, but because something deep inside them panics when the account drops below a certain number. And then, weirdly, they don't invest it. It just sits there in a regular savings account, earning basically nothing. And if you bring up index funds or a Roth IRA, they look at you like you just suggested handing your rent money to a stranger on the street. Here's what most people don't realize, though. That's not laziness. That's not ignorance. That's a trauma response, dressed up in financial language. Gen X came of age during some genuinely brutal economic moments. The recession of the early 80s, corporate downsizing becoming completely normal through the 90s, the dot-com crash, then 2008. Every single time they started trusting the system fell apart. So the distrust, it was earned, fair and square. Here's what most people don't realize. When we talk about Gen X and money, we almost always frame it as a behavior problem. Like if someone just explained compound interest one more time, everything would finally click. But that's completely backwards. The behavior is not the problem. The behavior is the symptom. And the root cause goes all the way back to childhood, to what they watched, what they absorbed, and what they were never actually told. Think about this. Imagine you're 12 years old. Your dad comes home in the middle of the afternoon, which never happens. He sits down at the kitchen table, doesn't say anything for a while. Your mom asks, "What's wrong?" He says the company let him go. No warning, no severance, nothing. And your parents, being the generation they were, don't explain it. They don't sit you down and say, "Here's the plan." They just tighten up. Dinners get simpler, vacations stop. Nobody says why. What does a 12-year-old learn from that? They learn that money is fragile. Jobs are not guaranteed. Banks, companies, the government, none of it can be fully trusted. And that the only real safety is cash you can physically see and touch. That lesson gets locked in, deep. Fast forward 30 years, that same kid is now 45, making decent money, and someone suggests opening a brokerage account. And something in their stomach just tightens. They can't fully explain it. It just feels dangerous, like handing control to something invisible. Now you might be thinking, okay, but that was then. The economy is different now. The tools are better. And you're right. Objectively, you're absolutely right. But here's the thing about emotional memories. They don't update automatically. They don't check the current interest rates. They just fire, like an alarm that doesn't know the fire is already out. That's not a character flaw. That's just how human brains process survival-level experiences. And this is why no spreadsheet, no financial advisor, no YouTube video about index funds actually changes the behavior on its own. Because the problem was never the information. The problem is what's running quietly underneath it. Hold on. Before I show you the numbers, let me show you what this actually looks like in real life. Two people, same age, same fears, same income, completely different bank accounts. Because once you see this, the statistics are going to hit you completely differently. Meet Tyler and Sophia. Both 48, both grew up in working-class households, both watched their parents navigate economic uncertainty with their jaws clenched and their mouths shut. Both landed in middle management earning around $75,000 a year. Same starting line, completely different finish. Tyler took the classic Gen X approach to money. He saves aggressively. Around $800 a month goes straight into a savings account. He's proud of that, and honestly, he should be. He's got about $62,000 sitting there right now. It feels solid. It feels safe. But Tyler barely touches his 401k beyond the minimum to get his employer match. The stock market makes him deeply uncomfortable. He watched his uncle lose a significant chunk of retirement savings in 2008, and that image never left him. So he just doesn't engage. He figures the savings account is cushion enough. Sophia had almost the exact same upbringing, same fears, same instincts. But 3 years ago, a coworker sat her down at lunch and just walked her through the math. No sales pitch, no pressure, just numbers sketched out on a napkin. Sophia started maxing her Roth IRA, $6,500 a year. She bumped her 401k contributions to 10% of her salary. She didn't overhaul her entire life, she just redirected money that was sitting still in a low-yield account into accounts that could actually work for her. 3 years later, between market returns and consistent contributions, Sophia has added roughly $47,000 in retirement assets. Tyler has added maybe $6,000 in savings account interest. Same income, same starting point, one lunch conversation, completely different outcomes. Now here's what I really want you to notice. Tyler is not irresponsible. He is not lazy. He is actually one of the most disciplined people in his office. The problem is that his discipline is being directed by fear instead of strategy. And that is the Gen X pattern in its absolute purest form. The work ethic is there, the sacrifice is there, the intention is completely there. But the psychological wiring, that deep, unspoken belief that the system will eventually betray you, keeps redirecting all that energy towards protection instead of growth. And protection without growth over a 20-year timeline is its own kind of quiet financial disaster, just a slower, softer one. Here's the thing though. Sophia didn't overcome her fear by becoming fearless. She didn't suddenly trust Wall Street or believe everything would work out fine. She just made one small decision, based on math she could actually see and understand. And that decision compounded, not just financially, but psychologically. Every month she checked her account and watched it grow, the fear got a little smaller. The trust in the process got a little stronger. That's the real unlock for Gen X. Not a product, not a 10-step plan, just one visible win that starts quietly rewriting the story. And look, if you think Tyler and Sophia are extreme examples, the data says otherwise. Actually, it's worse than I expected. According to the Federal Reserve's numbers in 2023, Gen X holds roughly 25% of total U.S. wealth. That sounds solid until you realize boomers hold about 52%, and Gen X had a longer runway than millennials to accumulate. The average Gen X household net worth sits around $243,000. But here's the catch. A massive portion of that is tied up in home equity. Not liquid, not invested, just sitting in the walls of a house they're still paying off. Their actual investable assets tell a very different story. Around 40% of Gen X has less than $100,000 saved for retirement. These are people who are 10 to 20 years away from needing that money. So Tyler isn't an outlier. Tyler is basically the norm. And the math on delay is genuinely brutal. Someone who invests $500 a month starting at 45 versus starting at 35 loses roughly $180,000 by retirement, assuming a conservative 7% average annual return. $180,000. Not because they spent it irresponsibly, not because they failed, just because they waited. That's what the Tyler pattern actually costs in real numbers. And that's why I keep coming back to the psychology. Because if we could just address the fear underneath, the math would fix itself. The compounding would handle the rest. But there's one more thing. Because even if Tyler wakes up tomorrow and starts investing, there's a hidden drain on his finances that Sophia doesn't have. And honestly, when I saw the numbers on this, I genuinely got angry. Gen X is sometimes called the sandwich generation. And if you haven't heard that term, it means they're financially responsible for people on both sides of them at the exact same time. They're raising kids, or helping adult children who can't quite launch in this economy,
and they're quietly supporting aging parents who didn't save enough, or whose savings got wiped out, or who just need more help than anyone anticipated. That's not a minor inconvenience. That's a structural financial drain that most boomers never faced and that millennials are only just beginning to see coming. Here's a number that genuinely stopped me cold. According to a 2022 Pew Research study, nearly half of adults in their 40s and 50s provided financial support to both a parent and an adult child within the past year. Half. And that support runs somewhere between $500 to $1,500 a month, depending on the situation. So now think about what we're actually describing here. A generation that is already psychologically wired towards self-protection, already deeply distrustful of markets.
And they're also quietly bleeding money in directions that don't even show up in their own retirement picture. And the cultural message they received growing up was, you handle it. You don't complain, you figure it out. So they do, silently, exhaustedly. And this is exactly where the standard financial advice completely collapses. Max your 401k, invest early, let compound interest do the work. That advice was designed for someone with a clean, linear financial life. One income, clear priorities, no competing obligations pulling in 3 different directions. Gen X doesn't have that. They have a complicated, multi-directional set of responsibilities that most financial content pretends doesn't exist. And telling them to just invest more without acknowledging any of that reality? Honestly, it's a little insulting. The math matters, but so does the context the math has to live inside. So what's the actual path forward? Look, I think the most important shift for Gen X isn't really a financial one at all. It's a narrative one. The story most of them are still running, quietly in the background, is that security comes from holding on, from keeping money close, from not trusting systems they can't fully control. And that story made complete sense once. It genuinely did. It kept people safe through genuinely dangerous economic moments. But stories have shelf lives. The new story isn't trust everything blindly. That's not realistic. And honestly, it's not smart given what this generation has actually lived through. The new story is, I can build a system that works even if I don't fully trust the people running it. Index funds, automatic contributions, simple, boring, consistent behavior over time. None of that requires trust in a person, just trust in math. And math, unlike a board of directors, doesn't have a bad quarter, doesn't restructure, doesn't send you home in the middle of a Tuesday afternoon. The compounding doesn't care about your childhood. It doesn't negotiate with your fear. It just works, quietly, in the background, while you're busy taking care of everyone else. All right, let's bring this all the way home. Gen X is not a generation that failed at money, not even close. They're a generation that was handed an incredibly complicated set of circumstances: economic instability, vanishing pensions, institutional betrayal at scale. And they adapted. They survived. They built real lives out of genuine uncertainty. But the tools they used to survive, the hoarding, the distrust, the emotional distance from financial risk, those same tools are now quietly working against them in the growth phase of their lives. And the core insight of this entire video is actually simple. Behavior follows belief. Always. If you believe the market will betray you, you behave in ways that keep you completely out of it. If you believe you started too late, you behave like it's not worth starting. If you believe your job is to protect everyone around you before protecting yourself financially, you do exactly that until there's nothing left to protect with. So the real work, the work that actually changes outcomes, is examining those beliefs, not attacking them, not dismissing the experiences that created them, just holding them up to the light and honestly asking, does this still serve me? Because here's what most people don't realize. You don't need to overhaul your entire financial life to change direction. You just need one honest look at the math. One small adjustment. One automatic transfer set up today, running quietly for the next 10 years. Tyler can still close the gap with Sophia. Not completely, but significantly. And significantly genuinely matters. The window is not closed. It's just smaller than it used to be. Which means the time to move is actually right now. We started this video with a question. What money belief are you still carrying that you never actually chose? I want you to sit with that tonight. For real. Because most of our financial habits weren't chosen. They were inherited, absorbed, picked up quietly around kitchen tables where nobody was actually talking about money, but everyone was deeply feeling it. You can acknowledge exactly where that came from and still decide to write a different ending. That's not toxic positivity. That's just math meeting self-awareness at exactly the right moment. If this video made you think differently about anything, subscribe, drop a comment, tell me what hit home for you. I genuinely read every single one, and sometimes the conversations down in the comments are more honest than anything I put in the script itself. See you in the next one.